So here we are again for the much delayed addition to the 2030 podcast. And I'm really delighted that I'm here with Hoa Ngo from Commensura this afternoon. This has been an impossible journey just to get this podcast to happen, but I'm really delighted we finally got there, and we're really doing it in the posh sort of studio environment, which is even better. So Hoa is someone who has had a life less ordinary, and whilst I would always say I'm an accidental recruiter, it just pales into insignificance when you think about this journey and things we're going to talk about today, which are absolutely amazing. Apart from her role as Managing Director at Commensura, she's also on the SIA Power List. She's recognised for her work in the industry, particularly around accessibility and inclusion to work, and does some amazing things with people in prisons and other people that are underrepresented, including gender representation and stuff. So, you know, I'm really excited about this conversation and really delighted we finally got here. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. I'm blushing as you're speaking now. So, and thank you for, kind of bringing us to this amazing space. I feel rather quite thrilled and a bit of a celeb doing this. So thank you for the treat.
No, it's my pleasure. And, like I said, we met by chance almost at a lunch, at an awards lunch, and we just got talking, and, immediately I could tell, hang on, this person's got a great story. So maybe we should start there and just talk about this life less ordinary, because, your journey in the UK didn't start like everybody else's.
Yeah, you're right. So my origin story is I'm ethnically Chinese and Vietnamese. So my mum was Vietnamese, my dad is ethnically Chinese, but was born and raised in Vietnam. And post-Vietnam War, there's a lot of troubles. So the people who were considered Chinese were not so politely asked to leave the country. So as a result, I'm one of those people who were known in the kind of late 70s and 80s as the boat people. So we escaped from Vietnam, went to Hong Kong on a boat with a bag of rice and not many possessions. So and when we got to Hong Kong, we were so lucky that various kind of Western governments decided to give refuge to quite a few of us boat people, and the UK, became our home. So super grateful actually for the government for giving us that opportunity to start a new life. But I say all this as if I remember it, but I was so young that I was 2.5 at the time, so no living recollection. But obviously it's had a big impact in terms of my family and, growing up and navigating a life, firstly in Wales, as a Vietnamese refugee.
It's amazing. I mean, I grew up in Australia, and we had lots of families from Vietnam that were part of that refugee experience. I mean, that's just so tough. Even at 2.5, though, I mean, it does sort of chart the course in a way about how life's been for you. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's quite strange because, when I was young, up to probably about the age of 5 or so, I didn't actually see myself as being any different to anyone else, because you have that wonderful kind of childlike quality of, you don't see different races and skin colours, etc. So that was a really joyous time, and then actually it then becomes part of your journey and realising actually, it's something quite different. But in many ways, actually, it gave me the art of being able to assimilate. And you read the room, or you start to mimic people's behaviours, and actually that becomes a real skill and benefit in life, which I think has taken me along my career, and hopefully given me the ability to connect with people in different ways, because you can adapt, dial yourself up and down to them.
It is phenomenal. I mean, given the recent events, sort of this backlash, racist backlash and things like that. I mean, you grew up in a time when the recent events are kind of a throwback to that period when you arrived in the UK. I mean, I have a lot of empathy for people from other countries because I experience a completely different issue, because I come from a white Australian background, and people sort of dismiss it as, he's just an Aussie, don't worry about it. But actually, I have a lot of connection with people that come from different places, because I do too, and culturally, even though people think it's the same, it's just not the same.
No.
So, but tell me then, so you went on through education and you went to Bristol University.
Yes.
And studied, what did you study and why did you study it?
I studied law because I thought that was a terribly, respected profession to go in, not really realising what law was about, because, came from a really good state school, but, a state school where we didn't have much representation of those sort of professions. So I probably watched a bit too much of LA Law and Ally McBeal and thought it'd be really glamorous, and the reality probably wasn't quite that. So hence my accidental journey into the world of managed services. But yeah, it was good.
So,
maybe too much of a good time.
So tell me about this accidental journey into managed services and recruitment. I mean, I said at the start, I'm an accidental recruiter, or I say I am. But how about you? What's your story into this sector?
I'd say rather than purposely go into the sector, the industry invariably finds you. So I started temping and worked temping at a recruitment agency, and then through serendipity, they said, actually, why don't you stay and help us with our bids? Because clearly you've got the ability to write and convey yourself and communicate well, and that's how it happened really. And I realised actually the industry is one that has always been really good at skills-based recruitment. So actually there aren't many sort of kind of qualification barriers to get across. So in many ways it's an industry that embraces inclusion, albeit perhaps a little bit accidentally when I first joined the industry. And actually it's actually a great talent incubator, I guess, for social mobility and kind of really pushing talent upwards, which is why I've been where I've been for so long.
It's amazing. I mean, my take on the industry, and I've said this to loads of people, is it's never been a job for me, not one day. For those reasons, that if you're good enough, you can make it fast enough. And I've just always had my head down and got on with it. And I guess that's, we have shared experience in that area, because the opportunity for me was open from day one. And if I was good enough, then I could get there. But, again, this idea of mobility and again, I don't want to kind of go down this sort of heavy road of bias and things, but it's interesting you say that it's kind of inclusive, because I've actually not necessarily always found recruitment, particularly agency side, that inclusive. And in fact, today, the industry still struggles with the idea that what comes first, the pound or, accessibility. Have you experienced bias through your career in the sector, gender bias or other kinds of bias because of your background in the sector?
That's a really tough question. I'd say for a long time, actually, I've, doing a podcast like this would be quite, kind of out of character for me a few years ago, because actually I've always been hesitant to talk about my background and journey, because what I've always wanted to do is actually push my way, up the career ladder through my proven capability, as opposed to highlighting any differences. So, but I'd say on my journey, ironically, I think gender bias probably was more apparent in my early career, because perhaps that was a more accepted bias, more broadly in industry. So as opposed to people specifically honing in on, race or anything else. But I work in an organisation. I've been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
So there's good reasons why, and actually the reason why I joined Impellum is because they have very strong female leaders, and that's something that's kind of been a great hook for me, because I know it sounds cheesy, but a lot of people say you can't be what you can't see, and actually just through simply there being great female leaders meant that actually people were kind of more up for stepping forward and making yourself uncomfortable and pushing yourself ahead in your career. So that's been really inspiring.
Which is great. I mean, and that's always been one of the really admirable features about that group. I mean, many of the people I know and really respect have come through that organisation, or in fact are still there, and it's got great tenure. But that commitment to gender balance or gender equality and actually merit-based stuff, I think, it's a bit more unusual than I wish it was.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about that, because I work with, as you know, I do work with in disability, and Liz Johnson is my business partner. She always talks about the fact she's never experienced gender bias, because disability trumps gender when it comes to the pecking order of, she's been prejudiced against many times because of a disability, but never gender. So I've seen her speak at International Women's Day and things like that, and she finds it like she's what's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess it's yours is just a slightly different version of a similar experience. So let's talk about recruitment, because that's what we do. So how do you, 20 years in one organisation, what's that evolution been like compared to when you started to now? How radically different is it? How similar is it? What do you see around the corner?
Oh gosh, how's it changed? I think these days, because I focus on managed services, I think a lot of our customers, understandably expect us to do the beautiful basics absolutely beautifully, and that's a no-brainer. So these days, where we really add value with our customers is getting really deep under the skin and working with them about how do we progress their own strategic priorities and grow their business as well, and because getting the right workforce and talent is absolutely instrumental to that. From a more kind of social value kind of ED&I space, I found actually that's been a big change. Two hot topics I think for us in the last 12 months have been AI and ED&I, or and social value. And I'm certainly feeling that actually, rather than just purpose washing, which is probably a few years in the past is what we had, these days organisations go, no, we really want to do this and to do this well, and those are the ones that we're really enjoying, kind of great programmes. I think you referenced earlier about prisons, so that's one of the areas that we're doubling down on at the moment. You would have read in the press that our prisons are quite full, so we need to do something about it, and actually addressing the root causes of all of this, and actually having great, having housing is a fundamental, key to people not reoffending us, and also having good, meaningful work, so they feel a value in their role, and they can then impart that on their families. So that's kind of a real passion project of mine, that we're working on at the moment, and
which is amazing. I mean, I'd like to know more about that. So how does that work manifest itself in reality? Is it is it you lending your recruitment experience, or is it go much deeper than that?
That and everything. So I'm an EAB chair at H&P Drake Hall, so EAB's Employment Advisory Board. So a few years ago, I think it was recognised there's a big gap between the brilliant people working within prisons trying to connect prison leavers with work and employers. So my role is to try and bridge some of that gap and help translate the needs of employers to the EABs, and that's been it's been a 2 and a bit year journey, which has been brilliant. We've now placed lots of men and women actually from various prisons into our customer base, because actually it's about changing and shifting mindsets. So the advocating is a big piece of what we do, as well as my bread and butter, which is recruitment. We can then find the right pathways. My next kind of phase of that is actually how do we help people to change the next generation. So this bit that breaks my heart, but a lot of the ladies we work with are mothers within the prison. And so we were talking about positive role modelling for their children, because otherwise you end up there's a risk of a cycle. So they have this brilliant scheme called Storybook Mums and Dads in prisons. So it enables parents with young children to go to the library, choose a short story, record their voice reading that story, so then their children have a bedtime kind of story from mum or dad. So what we're looking to do, and this is my all-out kind of request out there for the great wide internet, is if we have writers from more ethnically diverse kind of backgrounds, I think that'd be brilliant, because our prisons are probably disproportionately represented at the moment, and some of the role models and the great stories they have probably don't reflect what these children see in their day-to-day. So that'd be something I'd like to work with the prisons to change as well.
Well, it'd be amazing if that sort of small change, or even by sharing this podcast, can help people who feel that they can contribute to that. I mean, because it just makes a big difference. I mean, how did you find the sort of work in prisons, or did it find you, and how did that happen?
A bit of both again. So serendipity actually. So through a customer, we were doing an employment workshop at Drake Hall. So they said, please can you come along and do a little bit of a motivational talk, which is probably the most scary presentation I've ever done in my life. So they're saying, we'll have about 60 ladies from the prison, and you've got to captivate them for about half an hour. And I was like, gosh, how do I do that? So that sparked the start of the journey. A few years later, I met with some people who were kind of involved with the EABs, and actually James Timpson, coincidentally, had created that network. So he wrote to myself and a colleague to say, hey, I think you guys would be really great in this, to help us out on this journey, given your recruitment background. And it just so happened Drake Hall were looking for an EAB chair, and they remembered me and said it'd be lovely if we could join forces again. So
yeah, fantastic. Well, no better person.
yeah,
They got it right. I mean, when I work in the world of disability, I don't find it difficult to find supporters and cheerleaders.
Yeah.
But what I find really difficult is to get people to engage and come on the journey. So everyone thinks it's great, that what we're doing is amazing. I guess you get something similar. And then when I say, well, here's what would really help, give people an opportunity, they often run and hide.
Yeah.
Do you have a similar experience?
We do, and there's a lot of compliance concerns as well. So we work with employers to overcome some of those misconceptions. I think the biggest thing we found, the most powerful thing we found, was to bring employers into the prison itself, so they can see, the structure and rigor of the education program some of these women are put through before they leave prison. And actually, Drake Hall is probably an exception, but what you see is not what you get on TV. So there is, for instance, a Halfords workshop on site at Drake Hall where the women can enrol on the program, which means by the end of the program they're certified to then apply for any Halfords, apply for a job at Halfords at any store around the country. So it's those sort of great things that actually then breaks down the barriers and gets people thinking, how do I get involved in this? How do I create a program? So it's been good fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And that engagement piece, I mean, I wish, and maybe there is, but we're yet to find people or corporates that are committed to, say, dealing with disability in a similar way.
Yeah.
If there was opportunity for people to train, and we're doing a lot of work and starting to do more work with apprenticeships and trying to help connect the dots. Yeah. But it's just critical because there's such a shortage of people in key roles in the UK, and there are people that want those jobs, but there's sort of this employer class structure that says, computer says no when you get to a certain level, and yet these people would be able to do amazing jobs and be completely committed and really, really passionate about turning things around. And I see that every day in the work I do as well, which is amazing.
And I think sometimes it's maybe it's a fear of not knowing how to do the right thing. And I think I went to a RIDI session recently, kind of giving guidance to managers. And actually, one thing I really took home from it was quite a few of the speakers saying, actually, as leaders of a business, sometimes you assume that actually I must have all the answers. But actually, when it comes to supporting people with disabilities, for instance, is actually you don't have that lived experience. So don't punish yourself and not having the answers. Just talk to people, and find out, ask the right questions, and then we can find a solution. And I think sometimes it's just accessibility as well. That people, if you don't talk to people from a different marginalised group, you have bias, and you don't intend it, but you do have misconceptions, and it's quite refreshing to break that.
Yeah, it's really huge. I mean, people see it as sort of protecting themselves in a way, like if I don't have to deal with it, I don't have to think about it, or if I don't confront it. But actually, we're all sharing the planet, and actually we're all humans, and we should all just allow everyone to give the best version of themselves, and not everybody's had a straight and narrow pathway to where they want to get to.
That would be boring if that was the case.
Yeah, hugely boring, and I'm very fortunate I get to, like you, work in worlds outside of, an office sort of corporate environment. And, when I say it's inspirational to people, they tell me I'm being cheesy, because that's just normal life. And I've learned there's no such thing as normal. That is true.
Absolutely.
And, I think, it's been hugely educational for me as well as a parent and a grandparent and all that sort of stuff. So it's been great. What about the conventional recruitment life? I mean, how do you see that changing? I mean, I'm personally of the view that there's a lot of change on the very immediate horizon. Not everybody agrees with me, but the reason the podcast is called 2030 is because 2030 happens to be the year that all the Gen Alphas start working, and there's a lot of conversation about big generational change, and we've started to see it. But what's your view on what's around the corner for us as a sector?
Gosh, so much. I mean, AI will inevitably come and enhance actually and change the way we do things. Commensurate, my business is very much about the combination of tech and touch. So we've always been that kind of passionately digitally led organisation. So for me, it's not new information, but it's
Yeah.
great that everyone else is coming on that
Yeah.
that wonderful journey. So it's, you know, with every interaction we make with our customers, how can we automate that? So with my account managers and my team, when we go engage with customers, we really spark joy, because that's the bit that the computers and AI can't do.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of balance. And I find, you know, I guess with the more traditional recruiters, is how do we strike that now? Because I imagine the candidate expectations and how they want to engage is very different. So that's something we all need to, you know, get our heads around. And I guess reskilling is the other hot topic for everybody.
Sure is.
As well at the moment. And I mean, I'm quite a forgetful person, which is helpful, but we quite often talk about forgetting, sort of letting go of convention and history, which allows us to kind of be bolder and to develop. And I do find people of our generation now, you know, faced with needing new skills, we probably need to be forgetful about what we thought the way of work was like, and embrace, you know, kind of different skills and adapt to that. You know, there's lots of exciting things.
But that's a great way to look at it, though, because things are going to change, and you know, and they always have. But right now, we're at the kind of tipping point at quite an accelerated level of change. And it's interesting you say AI will enhance things. I mean, can you just dig into that a bit? I mean, unpack it a bit. What do you mean? How do you? Because people are fearful, and then they say it's wrong, it's not good. But actually, how do you see it as enhancing things?
I think you do need to be quite careful with the utilisation of AIs, particularly when you're in a kind of people-based service. You know, we're all about selecting talent. It's, for me at the moment, it's utilising AI to you know, kind of work smarter in essence. So how can I you know, you can actually rewrite interview questions these days, you know, utilising AI. You can utilise it for chat bots, which we do as well. You know, there's a whole raft of exciting things we're doing in the background, triaging requirements from our customers. It's really just to help, getting those computers to help my guys, you know, kind of work faster.
Yeah, because I don't think recruitment's going to get less human. I just think the humans are going to be at the bit of the process where it's actually more important they are.
Precisely.
And you know, again, particularly on agency side, and I know, you know, you work in an outsourced environment, but on the agency side, so many highly skilled communicators who are really could add a lot of value spend so much time anchored to a screen, right?
Precisely.
You know, and it breaks my heart to see people that joined the industry because they were enthused about what they could do, and then spend most of their day searching LinkedIn. You know, and I think, oh no, that's just a waste. No, correct, and you know, they do it for lots of reasons, you know, history, and they haven't forgotten the past, right? So in spite of the fact there's a lot of rhetoric about, you know, we're really innovative and stuff, they're just not. And I think that's where that tech and touch concept's really, really good, because I think this is a really exciting phase. I mean, I've been in recruitment nearly 40 years, and for me, I've seen a lot of change. You know, from the internet, the fax machine, right, to mobile phones, the internet, all that stuff. But actually, it was just all replacing, like it was just helping people. This is actually different. This is about technology actually now doing some of the tasks that people would ordinarily have done. And actually doing it in a better, more comprehensive way in order to enable people to do a better job. So I'm completely with you. And I think that's just the way forward. I think the industry as a whole has got a big shift to go through culturally, because, you know, I know some amazing people in recruitment. I also think some of the reputational issues in recruitment are deserved too. And we perpetuate the stereotypes. I also think, just to sort of take it really into the world you're in, I think that the whole ecosystem of recruitment is hopefully becoming more cohesive, where there's an understanding about the roles we all play, because you play a different role than an agency recruiter. And in fact, you help organisations manage talent. I mean, how much of the strategy are you and the team involved in versus the execution nowadays?
Gosh, we do everything. It's a small, tight-knit team at Commensura, so we are literally, you know, a working example at the moment is with the recent government changes, you know, pretty much the weekend after it all happened, we were, you know, there together, in a small huddle going, okay, what do we foresee being the changes actually, more importantly, because, gosh, half of my customers are local authorities. I can foresee a lot of those policy changes being pushed through to our local authorities, and actually they'll have to implement it, more importantly, which then has a natural impact on workforces. So going through all of that stuff, and really proud that we did that within, gosh, a fortnight, and we've got a conference coming up to talk it through. So you do need to be super agile now, I'm finding, in this world, because customers are no longer expecting us to do the transactional. They want answers, and I would, preempting the fact my customers will ask me in a couple of weeks' time, so I need to know the answers.
Yeah, it's complex. I mean, people businesses are complex, and organisations need to move. So I mean, that in itself's really amazing. I mean, generational change. I mean, do you see that evidence of generational change in how people want to work? Because I think Gen Zs, for example, are just as ambitious. They just have a different preference, choice around the kind of people they work for. But do you think that's a fact or fiction, this whole generational thing?
I'm less kind of observant of the generational thing. I'm probably more of the overriding trends of what people are expecting, from employers at the moment. So the pandemic, for instance, was monumental for everybody. So that has really shifted, the way in which we adapt to blended working, for instance, and that, for me, actually, we've seen greater productivity across our colleagues, because they have the joy of being able to pick up their children from work, but equally, I know they'll go the extra mile to get things through afterwards. So it's just been a lot more trusting, I think, in our relationship with our colleagues, which has been brilliant. And the other component is, there's been quite a few world events, and actually I'm finding quite a few of our team members expecting us to be more purposeful as an organisation. So actually they want to know what our stand is, about certain things, the riots more recently, for instance, and know they're part of an organisation that is supportive and kind of is where they want to be. It's become a much bigger thing. So I think that's something we're really proudly working on, and hopefully being regarded as a really purposeful organisation. We talk about the power of work, you may have heard, and that's a genuine thing. It's not just a lip service kind of statement.
Yeah, it is huge. I mean, the power of work's huge because it's part of how we're hardwired into your value or to your contribution. And again, people I work with, they would just love to pay tax. They would love to be employed and have that opportunity because they're hardwired into the purpose of work and the importance of that in terms of the structure of society and how it all works. So it's not just about turning up.
No,
it's way more than that. Look, I could talk to you forever about all sorts of things in recruitment and stuff. I mean, I always ask people at the end, what if they weren't doing recruitment or weren't in the sector, what would they do? Okay. I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you the same.
I'm going to give you a silly answer.
Okay.
So I always wanted to be a Blue Peter presenter when I was young. You're laughing at me, okay?
No, I can get it. Yeah, completely.
Mainly because there's a chap called Duncan Dares. Do you remember?
No.
Actually, you didn't grow up here.
I'm foreign. Yeah.
So, and he was the man that always was given the privilege of jumping out of planes and doing all the exciting things, and being really young, going, oh my god, I want that job. Less so the paper mache kind of building things side of things, but so that was my dream job. So maybe I just wanted to be an adventurer.
Are you still that adventurous? Like jumping out of planes and doing all this stuff?
I don't like heights, but I hike. So in my much younger days, I might have done Kilimanjaro. Almost got to base camp, but that's another story.
We'll have to do another podcast.
I know.
That's fantastic.
There might have been a bit of a rescue mission, but I wasn't being rescued.
Okay, so I've never had a Blue Peter presenter, a potential one, in a podcast. The most common thing, I don't know why, about half the guests I've had so far all want to be DJs.
Oh wow! Oh no!
I know, and I'm like, that sounds terrible.
No, it wasn't mine.
No, good for you. Well, it's been fun. Like, you've been amazingly tolerant with getting this far to just sit down and talk with me, and I'm delighted we finally got a chance to do it. I'd love to do this again. There's so much more I want to dig into and unpack with you because it's just really interesting. I think, I'm sure people tell you this, but, even your story is inspirational, but, I know you professionally through the industry, and I think, you're really leading the way on lots of things beyond just an organisation putting people in jobs, but creating future workforce and helping people that maybe made some choices they didn't really intend to make or shouldn't have made, and now they want to get out the other way. So I just want to thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And, it's been loads of fun, and yeah, let's do this again.
Will do. Thank you very much.